Before we get started with today's episode, I just wanted to take a moment to celebrate something really special. This week marks 5 years of Bring Your Product Idea to Life. In that time, we've had over 280 episodes, including my bonus Tuesday episodes, 3 lots of artwork, and more guests than I can possibly count. Whether you've been listening since the very beginning or you're new here, I just want to say a huge thank you for tuning in. Your support, your messages and your shares mean the absolute world. And of course, a big thank you to all of the guests who've shared their insights along the way. I've learned so much from each of you and I hope you have too. If you found the podcast even a little bit helpful, I would love it if you could recommend it to someone else who might benefit. Consider that a birthday gift to the show. And of course, if you want to give the podcast an actual gift, you can leave a tip via the link in the show notes. Thank you so much, and here's to the next 5 years. Welcome to the Bring Your Product Idea to Life podcast. This is the podcast for you if you're getting started selling products or if you'd like to create your own product to sell. I'm Vicky Weinberg, a product creation coach and Amazon expert. Every week, I share friendly, practical advice as well as inspirational stories from small businesses. Let's get started. Hi, so today on the podcast, I'm speaking with Melissa McCall from Moving Little Minds. You may remember that Melissa came onto the podcast in 2024. We recorded our first episode almost a year to the day. So when Melissa first came on the podcast, and I will link to this episode in the show notes, when she first joined me, she had just launched her business, Moving Little Minds, selling literacy products to parents. And we said at the time of that recording, because she was so early on, we said, let's catch up in a year and see what's changed. And a lot has changed. And I really think you'll be interested in hearing about how Melissa's first year's gone. I don't want to give you any spoilers, but she's now selling similar products, but to a different customer. And she's going to explain how she got there, all of the learning she's got from the past year. She has so much useful advice to share with you. It's brilliant to speak to someone in real time about what the first year of their business has been like. If there are any guests that I've spoken to, by the way, that you feel that you would like to hear what they're up to now, maybe someone from years ago, please let me know, because I'm always happy to have people back on the podcast as long as they would like to speak to me. But for now, I would love to reintroduce you to Melissa and you to find out everything that she's been up to. So hi Melissa, thank you for being here again.
Yes, great to see you again.
It's so nice to catch up. Can you please remind everyone who you are, tell us about your business and what you do and sell?
Absolutely. So I am Melissa McCall and I'm the owner of Moving Little Minds. At Moving Little Minds, we specialize in bringing research-based preschool teacher instruction and merging that with play. So our biggest focus is training teachers in how we can improve early literacy instruction, but that doesn't mean we are drilling children. It's looking at ways that we can take what the science shows and research and merge that with fun, engaging activities.
Amazing, thank you. And you were first on the podcast in 2024, and I think it was almost exactly a year ago that we first spoke, Melissa. So can you please remind everyone where you were with your products when we first spoke a year ago, just for some context?
Absolutely. So a year ago, my biggest focus was on preschool parents. So I had just developed a product, still doing the same role, which is I'm in classrooms with preschool teachers and children, but I found parents to be my target. So I had developed a product that brought fun, engaging activities in the home that just takes a few simple minutes. So a tear-off style calendar that you can do an activity in just a minute.
Amazing, thank you. And so when we last spoke a year ago, we said we would have you on after a year or two to see how you were going, because I think at that point you had just launched them. Is that right?
That's right. So a year ago when we had spoke, I had launched them, of course, to my local network. I'm in a ton of schools around the area, so got them out there. I currently have them in 4 boutiques in the area, and I went through the process of getting them on Amazon. So I went ahead and did FBA, and so that was kind of my journey, probably 3 to 6 months after we spoke. And so that's where I was.
Amazing. And so Well, let's talk about what's changed for you since then. And there's obviously a lot to cover, so we can take this a piece at a time. I mean, let's start with, how did it go on Amazon? So you got set up, then you sent in stock for FBA. How did it go from there?
Well, it was rough getting it set up, but I attended your webinar and that helped me a lot. What I found, because the product is it's like a tear off 5x5 type calendar, I had logged it as a book, and so that was creating a lot of issues with needing IBSN, I believe is what it's called.
Yeah.
And so after I finally realized that I could tag it as something different, I did get it up on Amazon. I sent very few quantities just because I wasn't really willing to invest a ton of money in the product at the time. And I actually was really impressed with the support that they have for first-time owner or first-time FBA customers. So I did have some calls with an Amazon employee that helped me with some stuff for a couple months, which was really helpful. So yeah, that's how I got it up and going. And I can tell you a little more about how the sales have gone if you'd like.
Yeah, I do. And I also have to say, everyone listening from the UK will be really jealous about it, because we don't always get that here in the UK.
And
Yeah.
the funny part about that was I kept getting this email from somebody, and support is tough at Amazon. And so I just thought it was some sort of spammy sell thing. So finally I was like, whatever, I'll click and set it up. And I was really pleasantly surprised that it was actually a real Amazon person helping me. So
That's really good.
Yeah,
And how did the sales go?
So sales, I still have a few on there, but I'm going to go ahead and shut down the FBA part. It's just I'm not making my money to have it there. The hardest part for me is with a preschool product. I'm literally, and you talk about this all the time, but I'm on page like 60,000 or something absolutely insane. And so we can talk more how my business has evolved. I've learned that my market is more preschool directors and preschool teachers. And so the product isn't really fitting my current line. Maybe eventually I can hire and expand and go back to that parent market as well. But what I found that I'm really good at is focusing on the teachers. And so I haven't really been willing to put the money into ads and going to trade shows and that kind of thing. It's just not a season of my life with 2 children and where I am right now. So I'm kind of slowly going to let that inventory sell off and just pause the shop for now.
That makes absolute sense. And as you say, if your target market is preschool directors, they're not going to be going on Amazon, I assume, to find their resources. They're going to be going to other places. So that makes a lot of sense. And does the same go for, you mentioned you were stocked in some boutiques close to you. So does the same go for that as well? Are you sort of letting go of the product side for the moment?
So I have, I still have them in there, and I've done some updates. I actually did a product focus group with the products probably 3 or 4 months ago just to get some feedback. And I've made some minor tweaks, but also what I found through the feedback was it's going to take like a major revamp. A lot of the parents want it reusable. They found that like their child wanted to do the same activity again and again. And right now it's designed as like a tear off, like a one and done. So I got some really great feedback, and I can make some minor tweaks, like they want to see the age on the front, which makes total sense. If you go into a bookstore and it's on the shelf, but it doesn't have an age, you're not going to be as likely to pick it up. If you have a 3-year-old and it says 3 right on the front, you're going to pick it up. So I've done some easy tweaks based off of that feedback. And I have a local printer that I use that I love, so I can order those small quantities. So I'll continue to keep it up locally. I have had a few, restocks. So
Well, that's brilliant. But it sounds like the products aren't your main focus at the moment. Is that fair to say?
Exactly. So what I've found, I am developing some new products, but they're more focused on the teachers. And the exciting part about the product is sometimes you think about it's not like as a failure, but it is not a failure. It's simply I can take all that work and I can pivot it, and I can use those activities that I have in that product and start tweaking it and reusing it and repurposing it towards preschool teachers. So that part's exciting.
That's really exciting. And will these be physical products as well?
Yes. So one of my biggest sellers is teaching the body, the sounds through body motions. So I've always had these flashcards out, but one of the lessons that I've learned over time is, if you want to have a quality product, it can't be completely DIY. So I've just this week picked them up. I hired a graphic designer to take what I've done and really revamped them. And so I'm really excited. So that's a lesson that I did learn. Yes, we can do a lot ourselves, but if you really want a high quality product, you're going to have to invest in someone who's a professional at what you want to sell. So.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And so you've got these new products. As they're designed for teachers, how will you be selling those? Because I guess they're not going to be going onto Amazon. I think I might have seen them on your website. So how will you be getting these out to people?
So I'm going to do a relaunch soon, mostly focusing on my email list and social media. But one thing that I did learn from the previous product is that you have to have a marketing plan. I think I was a little bit naive and I have 3,000 followers. Everybody's going to want it. No, you have to have a plan. You have to talk about it a lot. So being more purposeful. So I have them ready and sitting in my house. And in the past, I would have just put it out to the world. But that's not the most effective marketing technique, right? You have to have a plan. So I'm sitting on them. I'm going to be getting better pictures and making sure that I have a true launch. They will sell on my website, and they also come in the curriculum that I sell. So those will be my main forms right now. Will just be my website. I might consider, they do have flashcards on Amazon. So depending on how they go, they're perfectly usable for teachers as well. That's what's kind of fun about preschool is that it's preschool, right? A parent could do it, a homeschool family, or a teacher. So that product does really cross both markets.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it sounds like your main customer going forward is going to be teachers, preschool directors. What was it, and sorry to go back to this, but I just think it'd be really interesting for people. So what was it that made you realize, okay, this is my customer? Because you were so focused previously on parents. What was it that helped you to make that change?
That's a really good question. So, and the funny part is I've finally evolved into who is the buyer. And even before I was focusing on teachers, but when it really comes down to it, a preschool teacher doesn't have a big salary, right? And so I have a neighbor next door, and she is very capable of buying my products. She's a preschool teacher. And when I show her the products, guess what she says? Our director needs to buy those for us. And so after 3 years, I've finally been like, oh, it's preschool directors. The thing that got me to pivot away from preschool parents is, one, it's a pretty saturated market with people out there wanting to teach you how to teach your child how to read. I found that with my resources and my skills on social media, that's not my specialty. The second thing that kind of swayed me from that is the message. The message can be hard to get out. It is important for you to work with your child. These are research-based things. And so I found to get my message out was difficult as well for me. And I just really love working with teachers. I feel like that is a strength of mine. So that's why I pivoted.
Well, that's really interesting. Thank you. I wanted to cover that because I think it can be really common to think you know who your customer is and find out actually my customer is someone slightly different. And to give another example, I was speaking to someone recently who always assumed that their target market was parents. And then they've sort of realized after being in business for a couple of years that actually, oh no, their target market is actually more grandparents, because the products they
Oh,
sell lend themselves more to gifting and to buying for multiple children. So I just found that really interesting.
yeah. And it's funny because you think big, right? Like anyone can give this, and then like it gets smaller and smaller and smaller, like your target customer, really. And that makes it easier, right? If you have that avatar in your head, you can really tailor your marketing correctly too.
It really does. And I know when I first started out, when I was selling products meant for babies, I started out going, well, anyone who has a baby can buy this, whether it's mums or dads, or it could be grandparents or aunties, and literally, I feel like I was like, anyone can buy this. But soon you start to realize, actually, no, it's not for everyone, whether that's because of the price point or the messaging or whatever it is. And you really start to refine and work out, okay, actually, I can't talk to everyone, because no matter what your product is, it's never going to be for everyone. Or even if it's, as I say, in my example, for babies, it's never going to be for everyone with a baby, because
Exactly.
everyone is just so different in what they want and what they need.
Exactly.
Yeah. But it's funny how I think a lot of people do start out much wider and then take time to really narrow it down.
And I always, sign up for free webinars and all the things, and they give you like, create your avatar. And you kind of, when you're first starting out, roll your eyes. You're like, really? And it's because it's so down to the penny of like, where do they shop? And what are they wearing? And all the things. And I always kind of thought that was silly, but like, it's actually what you should do. Because then you can say, this is my person I'm talking to. And it just makes the marketing so much easier, just to be like, talk to your avatar.
There's that saying, isn't there? Like, if you're talking to everyone, you're talking to no one. I'm sure that's a real saying.
Exactly.
Yeah, I haven't made that up, have I? And it makes so much sense, because you're right. Unless something can really capture you and what it is you want, or what you need, or what your issues are, like, it has to speak to you, because we see so much now. Like, you just go on Instagram and there's so many ads, and the ones that make me stop are the ones that are relevant to me.
Absolutely. And yes, that's been another kind of turning point, I would say, over the past couple months. It's just like social media is getting so saturated. And it's kind of been a relief for me to say, like, directors are my market. And I don't have to be so all over social media to try to grow a following, because that's not necessarily where they are, right? Like, I need to find where the directors are shopping and what they are doing, which probably isn't like watching influencers all day.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. And I was talking to someone, I can't remember who I was talking to about this recently, about the fact that you can spend a lot of time creating lovely social media posts, but if your ideal customers aren't on there, it's kind of a pointless exercise. I'm not saying like not having a social media presence, but I think you have to put your effort into where your customers actually are. And as you say, if they're not, if preschool directors aren't on Instagram, for example, looking for resources, and it's about finding where are they? Where do they go looking for ideas or inspiration or new products?
Absolutely. And it just kind of, it's all about like that email list, right? Like, if you can take, what I've been doing is just taking the time to find out where like connecting with the director. So now I can nurture them and get them into my world. That's not just them watching a video that I made on social media. So,
yeah, of course, that's really, and actually, I guess that's the benefit of knowing, who these customers are, because now you can think about what's important to them. And I guess it is going to be slightly different to what's important to a parent.
absolutely, for sure.
And so what else over the last year, and I appreciate there's probably going to be a lot, but what are some of the other things that maybe you've learned over the last year?
Let's see. Well, I think one of the biggest is, I think I already hit on this, but just having a plan. So if you are going to have a product, having a plan more than just like, I I've had several, I've done some free mentor groups, and kind of the more mentoring you get, the more confusing it gets, right? Like you have someone who's like, you need to have a plan, this and that. And then you have another advisor saying, put it out to the world and see what happens. And what I have found between the two of those is that it's okay to put a little bit out, but then that shouldn't be like what you have to get feedback and stop and then come up with a real plan. So I do think there's so much value in putting something out there, getting the feedback and tweaking it, and then being prepared to really go in and relaunch. I also think you have to be willing to spend money. It's especially with products, like you are not going to get seen on Amazon. Like you have to be able to spend some money. You have to, if marketing is not your specialty, like you have to be willing to reach out to someone who is doing marketing or look at affiliate links or that kind of thing. So as far as the product side, that's something I've definitely learned. And just like being open to feedback has been so great. So it's not always easy to get feedback, but getting creative, putting yourself out there. Like I did the focus group and offered the product for free. And that was so valuable to hear. Like one thing I learned was a lower price or free shipping. And they're like, I don't care how high the price is. If I have to pay shipping, I'm out. So I'm like, okay, like almost every single person in that group said that. So that made me think on my website, even of course on Amazon, we all want free shipping, but even on my website, like, is that causing cart abandonment, right? Because they see the price and now they have to pay $4.99. So feedback is amazing.
That's so helpful. Thank you for all of that. I totally agree. To come back to the first thing you said about a plan, I think you're completely right. And there's definitely benefits in testing your ideas. But if you have a new product or a new range, I think there's definitely something in sharing it enough so that you get some initial feedback. You can see if there's any take up. But then you're right. I think to give something a good chance, there does need to be a plan behind it. And then with the, I know you were talking about having to spend some money. And again, I mean, I agree with everything you've said. I think the spending the money definitely, because whether it's Amazon or whether it's your website, it's so hard to get seen now, because you were mentioning earlier about the noise of social media, but there's just noise everywhere. It doesn't matter whether you're on Amazon, or someone was talking to me about Etsy recently, saying, it's so hard to get seen on Etsy. Like 10 years ago, it was fairly easy to come up in search, and now it's really difficult. And I just think that's the way things are going. It gets noisier and noisier and busier and busier. And like, I don't know if the days of putting something out there and it just taking off ever was a thing, but if it ever was, it definitely isn't anymore.
I 100% agree with that. I put my product on Etsy too, and I didn't put any. I did all the SEO things. I did the keyword searches and all those free type things that you can do. And I'll get like my weekly report, and it's like, you had one visitor to your shop. I mean, it is noisy. It is really noisy. And so like you said, and kind of what I mentioned, like if you're going to design a product, be ready to spend some money in the beginning to really get the support. Or if you can't spend the money, have a plan to be creative with your resources around you. Like, how can you get this out to 50 people for free who do have a presence on social media? So if it's not money, it does need to be a strong plan.
Yes, and time. And that also leads me on to something I think that you've done really well, is working out now who your customer is and just focusing on that customer. And I think the other benefit of that is, now, okay, if I'm targeting preschool directors, I'm assuming, but tell me if I'm wrong, but you can be like, I don't need to be on TikTok. I don't need to be posting on Instagram every hour. There's so many things you can sort of rule out because actually your customers aren't there. Whereas I think something I see people often do at the start is go, 100% into everything. And that's a lot. Whereas I think also, same with like marketplaces, I say to people, if you're going to get started on Amazon, absolutely, but get established on your website first and then move on and do that, rather than trying to be everywhere all of the time, because it's just so overwhelming. And it's actually better, I think, to do less well than to try and do everything but never kind of nail any of them.
Exactly. And that's one thing I've learned and evolved over this past year too, is become an expert at something, right? Like just stick your lane. I think especially as entrepreneurs, we always want to create, like, it's just like that creative brain, and that's what kind of sparks us, right? But like just make the thing, or like do the course and refine it and get better at that one thing. And then as you become more well known and people start saying, oh, this is a great product, then you can expand, because now you have the clout and the support from your fans.
Absolutely, because that's the other thing I've seen as well, is people have a product and it's out in the world, and then suddenly there's like all these other products, which I'm not saying for a minute don't expand and grow your range, but I agree with you that, and by the way, I did this myself. I feel like when I was selling my baby products, I launched my first product and then my second product fairly quickly afterwards. But actually, in hindsight, I kind of should have maybe given it another 6 months to get that first one really established and then built on it. But hindsight, of course, is a wonderful thing, because I think, especially if you are an entrepreneur and you're creative, you just want to do all of the things. And while there's definitely some benefits in having that energy and all those ideas, I think it can be hard to do everything well when you're trying to do too much.
I did want to get your opinion on you're going to have to help me with the words. It's like where you create a brand on Amazon. Do you feel that is it Vine? It's not Vine. Oh, I did Vine as well.
You did?
I did Vine.
Amazon brand registry.
Yes. So then you can have like your page. I believe that's what it's called, right? Where you have like, do you feel like, I feel like that would have benefited me as I was going to expand some versions of that, just because it seems like a much more beautiful page to go to. Was that something that, like, in the future, if I do go back to Amazon, that you would recommend?
Yes, I think if you have a trademark and you're eligible to apply for brand registry, I think it's definitely worth doing. I think if you have a range of products, it's great because it kind of groups them all under your brand. So it makes it really easy for customers to look at everything you offer rather than just these standalone listings. You can also have a nice storefront. And then, as you said, you can also add more content to the listings themselves. And also, more and more sellers, you're probably seeing yourself when you shop on them lists, and more sellers are starting to use these features. I don't think we're there now, but I think we are going to get to a point where you're almost going to have to be on the same level as the other sellers, if that makes sense, because so many more people are just starting to use all these features, which is amazing. Yeah. But I feel like those who don't, when you compare like the listings, the ones that have brand registry and using the A+ content and have a storefront, they're just going to stand out more.
And that I was trying to remember what held me back, and it was the trademark. So I didn't have the product trademarked, so then I was looking into the expenses of that and if it was going to be worth it to me. And doing it, was it going to be worth it to me doing it through Amazon, which seemed like it could have been quite a bit more expensive than if I did it on my own. And again, it was all just kind of pulling away from my new vision. I was like, this is not taking me in the direction that I want to go. So.
Yeah. And it can always be something to go back to. And I'll be honest, I don't know in the US how easy it is to get a trademark, how much it costs. In the UK, I can say it's simple and not too expensive. Like I think it's not much over £100, like maybe £120 or something. So not a massive expense. And it's just an online form. So it's quite straightforward. I don't know how easy it is for you to do the same, because it's possibly different.
I think when I looked into it, it was like $1,200 if you did it through Amazon, which seemed, I don't know.
No, don't do it through Amazon.
That's what I was kind of like. And then I just kind of got overwhelmed and I was like, I just can't do this. I can't spend my time doing this. So I moved on.
That sounds fair enough. So, Melissa, what's on your plans for 2025?
So I've got a lot of excitement coming up. So I recently launched an online course, and so I love training teachers, but it's hard for me to train outside of my local network, obviously. So I've launched a course called Alphabet Academy, and I've actually had some directors across the nation purchase it and purchase multiple licenses for their staff. So now they can learn with Moving Little Minds on their own. So my ultimate goal is to create a network of, or not, a catalog of several different courses that are also going to have products that you can purchase that really align with the course. So being more strategic in, I'm here to educate you, and here are some amazing products that will take your teaching to the next level.
That's amazing. So it sounds like you've got a real strategy going forward.
Yes, after several years, I'm finally in a really exciting place. So I'm excited.
Well, that's amazing. And it doesn't, I always think it doesn't matter how long it takes, because I think it takes all of us a lot longer than maybe we'd like to admit, or you know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like,
Yep.
I don't think there's such a thing as an overnight success, or maybe someone can prove me wrong on
Yep.
that. But I think that we all sort of go on a bit of a journey, and then we end up exactly where we're meant to be.
100%. That's definitely what I've learned is, I was getting a little discouraged, and one of my mentors said, like, all you have to just think of these years as product discovery, right? Customer discovery. And now you know your vision. So it's been exciting.
Yeah. And Melissa, the final question for you, what would be your number one piece of advice for other product creators?
I think I've hit on this several times, but just having a clear plan. So especially when it comes to the marketing. So are you going to need to go to trade shows? And of course, this takes a little bit of experimenting. For instance, with my product, I found when I would go and present to certain groups of people and had the product there, I would sell a bunch, right? So that's telling me if I were in person with these people. But again, that just wasn't fitting my lifestyle at the time to go to all these places. So the biggest thing is just be prepared to have a plan, assess what you learn with the plan, and then learn and try again.
That's so helpful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening right to the end of this episode. Do remember that you can get the full back catalogue and lots of free resources on my website, vickyweinberg.com. Please do remember to rate and review this episode if you've enjoyed it, and also share it with a friend who you think might find it useful. Thank you again, and see you next week. If you've been inspired to start a podcast in 2024, I really recommend my podcast host, Captivate. Captivate were my top pick when I started podcasting 4 years ago because of how easy it was for a complete novice like me to get started. I've stuck with them for the last 4 years because Captivate is still really simple to use. They keep adding great new features like the ability to share ads like these, and they've just been really reliable. So when you're ready to start your own podcast, you can use the link in the show notes and get a free 7-day trial with Captivate.